Hello, this presentation will take a look at my research proposal, which is regarding financial literacy and retirement planning. What we're going to talk about today will first be my motivation, why I'm interested in this particular study. Next, looking at the research questions and my hypothesis. Thirdly, we'll take a look at the literature that I've viewed in order to prepare for this study. Next will be the data sources that I plan to use to complete the research, including summarized statistics and regression. Then the empirical model that will be used to run the regression, and how I plan to do that. So this visual is actually from the S&P Global Financial Literacy Study, and it just gives you kind of an overall idea of where the issue is with financial literacy worldwide. Only a third of adults worldwide are financially literate. The United States is a little bit above average, but still only half of individuals as a representative of the population are financially literate. And then as far as men and women, again, somewhere around a third for being financially literate. Clearly, this imposes a problem when we're talking about investing and saving funds for post-career expenditures. So furthering my motivation for this study, levels of financial literacy, as you saw in the last slide, are low, and in this new image that you can see, they're actually declining. This again is another image, but this is from a different source, the National Financial Capability Study in 2016. As you can see, for each of the questions which were posed in this particular study, the level of correctness that respondents are answering gets lower for each year, starting with 2009 and then up to recently 2015. So poor understanding of financial concepts impedes successful retirement planning. With a decreasing amount of assistance available to the elderly population, such as Social Security and Medicare, adequate investment during one's working career is more important now than it ever has been. So with more responsibility put on individuals, but yet a decreasing level of financial literacy, there is a clear problem. These are the research questions, just some of them. I actually have lots of questions, but these will most likely be the ones that I am going to look at in detail. Firstly, does an understanding of compounding interest, inflation, and risk diversification impact a person's decision to plan for retirement? So I'm going to look at those three variables as far as assessing financial literacy. Next, does an understanding of compound interest, inflation, and risk impact a person's likelihood to have investments in non-retirement accounts? This is kind of a subsection of what I'm looking at. I'm just curious, as far as, a lot of those who work do have a 401k, but are they also investing in other non-retirement accounts, stocks, bonds, IOUs, and further, that would help to fund their post-career expenditures? Then, is there a relationship between the financial education a person has received and the likelihood they are to plan for retirement? Furthermore, is there significance to when they receive that financial education? A lot of studies have looked at this, but it always seems to be a very brief section. I feel that this is one of the most important parts of why there is such a widespread of financial illiteracy. I would like to further look at how much education is being offered, who's taking it, and when they took it, to see if there's any type of relationship of when it should be best be offered. And then next, do gender, age, level of education, risk personality, employment status, and perceived level of math abilities have any impact on retirement readiness? These are additional independent variables which I will look at. Some of these have been used in past studies, others have not. Being a high school math teacher, I was really interested in the level of math abilities, but I think still that's not a whole look at financial literacy, but still that computation of being able to see how much you have to save for retirement may come from a lack of math ability. And lastly, are there similarities in the results of financial literacy and retirement planning across several well-developed economies? We'll be taking a look at that with summary statistics. And then my hypothesis for this research study is that more financially literate individuals are more likely to prepare for retirement. As you can see here, we might have a trend as far as higher income individuals and planning for retirement. Here on the left, they've tried to figure out how much they need to save for retirement, 60% in that high income level, and likewise 87% have retirement accounts at that high income level. So again, I think the more financially literate are means the more education, maybe the more money you're making because of that education, and then the more likely you are to plan and have retirement accounts. Okay, so taking a look at the literature. For the first paper by Anna Maria Lusardi and Olivia Mitchell, and then the second set of authors in their paper, Financial Literacy and Retirement Planning in Germany, they both pretty much looked at the same thing as far as the causal relationship between retirement planning and financial literacy, with financial literacy being the independent variable and retirement planning being the dependent variable. Both of them used OLS and a multivariate regression analysis in addition to an IV estimation to check for errors, and they both found that there was a very strong, significant positive relationship between financial literacy and retirement planning. Now, the second paper by Anna Maria Lusardi and Olivia Mitchell actually talks about financial literacy around the world. This is really where my heart was for this research study. Again, the data is not available to me in order to do more regression on worldwide, but I was able to look at this paper and to again see that financial illiteracy is widespread among several well-developed nations. They again concluded that financial literacy is such an important part when we're looking at retirement security. So again, they looked at several well-developed nations, many over the G7, some which were not, and reached the same conclusions as in just solely the United States and also in Germany. Lastly, the third paper I looked at, which was Financial Literacy and Retirement Planning in Sweden, again, very, very similar methodologies, very similar ways of conducting their research as far as using that survey that has those three questions about risk, interest, and inflation. So they used those three questions. They did alter the interest question in this specific study, and I think that's why they did find some different conclusions regarding the relationship between financial literacy and retirement planning. They did not find as strong as a relationship, but again, I feel that is due to the alterations in their study. So these 4 total papers kind of gave me a nice foundation in order to continue my own discovery in the relationship between these two variables. And next, let's take a look at the data that I will be using to conduct my research. My main data source will be the National Financial Capability Study, which is done in the United States. It was conducted very recently from June 2015 through October of 2015, and then the results were compiled in 2016. The sample consisted of 27,564 adults across all 50 states of the U.S., and then there is approximately 500 participants per state. In larger states like Texas and California, there were quite a few more participants than the average. The survey focused on participants' ability to make ends meet, plan ahead, manage financial products, financial knowledge, and decision-making. The results of this survey will be used to run OLS and IV estimation. Of course, I'm only looking at some of these variables, which we will talk about in the next few slides. Now, to look at a worldwide view of the effect of financial literacy and retirement planning, I'm going to go ahead and look at summary statistics. So these summary stats will be coming from countries in the G7, Japan, Germany, Canada, and France. These are all relatively recent surveys that were done in each country looking at financial literacy and its impact on retirement planning. They all consist of those 3 similar questions, which I'll be looking at to measure financial literacy. Once again, interest, inflation, and risk. That'll make it pretty consistent throughout the research study. Again, these approaches follow the Anna Maria Lusardi and Olivia Mitchell approach, which was initiated back in the Health and Retirement Study, which consists of those questions that we just talked about to assess one's level of financial literacy. For my model, to measure the impact that financial literacy has on retirement planning, we're going to use those 3 questions and use the idea of how they were answered, how often they are answered correctly in conjunction with the OLS regression. The questions involving the interest rates, inflation, and risk will be part of the independent variables. And then in addition, I would like to look at age and gender as one variable, level of education, employment status, willingness to take risk, self-perceived level of math ability, and any previous financial education. Here's just an overview of a possible regression equation. What's going to be very difficult here is I'm looking at a lot of dummy variables. I'm going to be having several levels of dummies in this regression because as far as the interest question, 1 if it was answered correctly, 0 otherwise. Same with inflation, same with risk. When you're looking at beta 4, that's going to be the coefficient of answering all of those 3 questions correctly. So again, that would be 1 for answering all correctly and 0 otherwise. Now when you get into beta 5, beta 6, beta 7, beta 8, beta 9, beta 10, and beta 11, the coefficients of those variables are going to be dependent on several levels. It just depends on what the variables, as you can see in the research proposal in a little more detail, there could be, I think, up to 7 different levels, of course, canceling out. If there's, for example, if there are 8 responses, there will be 7 levels of a dummy variable. Again, I find this to maybe be a challenge for me when running the aggression, but I think that's what's going to have to be done. So my overall research plan in order to be successful in the discovery of the impact of financial literacy on retirement planning, I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to further my literature review. I have several additional papers, including ones from, again, Japan that were not in the current literature review, Canada, France, in order to get a much even more stronger foundation of financial literacy and its impact on retirement planning in countries other than the U.S. I have my data in Excel. And the Excel data will be used to run the OLS multivariate regression and then IV estimation to check for errors. I hope to use SAS or Stata. I honestly haven't played around with one or the other enough to see which one is going to work best, but I hope that those are going to help me to provide the conclusions to support my hypothesis. To look at a worldwide view of this issue, we're going to look at summary statistics alongside my regression of the United States. And then lastly, I'm going to use tables and graphs to further support my hypothesis that financial literacy has a significant and strong positive impact on retirement planning.